In the year 1842, deep in the heart of Georgia's cotton lands, one woman ruled her property like a queen without a king. Her name was Elalina Whitfield, and her plantation spread as far as the eye could reach, endless rows of white cotton shining under the southern sun. But behind the tall, white columns and kind Sunday smiles, Elalina was hiding an idea that would stain her family's name forever. When her husband, Thomas Whitfield, died suddenly from fever, Elalina inherited everything: the land, the fortune, and more than 200 enslaved people. Neighbors whispered that no woman should control such a vast estate alone, but Elalina paid them no mind. She believed the Whitfields were meant for greatness, that their blood was stronger, purer, chosen by God. And so she made it her purpose to keep that power alive, even if it meant twisting every law of nature and morality to do so. Each night she sat by the fire in her husband's study, staring at his old ledgers and a cracked portrait of her 5 daughters. Every one of them was beautiful, tall, and pale, but Elalina saw something lacking. "They have my grace," she would whisper, "but not his strength." To her, strength meant control, power, dominance, and soon she became consumed with finding a way to improve her bloodline. Life on the Whitfield plantation moved like clockwork, at least on the surface. The enslaved worked from sunrise until the cicadas went quiet at dusk. Overseers barked orders, cotton gins rattled, and Elalina watched from her balcony, cold and still like carved stone. Among the workers, one man stood apart. His name was Josiah. He was taller than the rest, broad-shouldered and silent, with eyes that seemed to look straight through stone. He had been sold from Virginia years earlier, taught just enough to read the Bible, and known for a strange calm that unsettled overseers. When Elalina first noticed him, it was not desire or pity, it was calculation. She said nothing that day, but her gaze lingered longer than it should have. That night, servants whispered about the mistress's interest. "Miss Elalina been asking about that tall one," said an old woman named Ruth. Another servant shook her head. "Ain't nothing good come when a lady looks too hard at one of us." But the rumors did not fade. By the next month, Elalina ordered the overseer to move Josiah closer, give him lighter duties, and bring him near the main house. She claimed it was because he was dependable, but everyone on the plantation knew Elalina Whitfield never acted without purpose. Late one evening, while the house slept, Elalina stood before her mirror, studying her reflection, her once youthful beauty softening beneath candlelight. Her eldest daughter, Mary Ann, would soon turn 17, the same age Elalina had been when she married. The Whitfield name must not fade. She whispered to herself, "I will build a stronger line, a perfect line." She reached for her husband's portrait, tracing his face with shaking fingers. "You failed to give me a son," she murmured, "but I will finish what you began." The plan took shape in her mind, dark, forbidden, and unholy. The next morning Josiah was summoned to the main house. He stood before Elalina, sweat shining on his skin after a long day in the fields. She studied him in silence, then spoke. "From now on, you will work under my direction. The overseer will answer to me." Josiah nodded but said nothing. Behind his calm eyes something stirred, fear or suspicion. Outside, the wind moved through the cotton fields, carrying whispers the house could not silence. Servants began to talk, and the overseer avoided the mistress's eyes because everyone on the Whitfield plantation knew one truth. When Elalina Whitfield wanted something, she never stopped until it was hers. The tall man she chose became part of a plan no one could have imagined. What started as obsession would grow into something darker and more deadly. The summer of 1843 was the hottest anyone could recall. The air felt thick and heavy, as if it were holding its breath. Elalina called Josiah to the veranda. She sat in a high-backed chair, a lace fan moving slowly in her hand, her daughters watching from behind the curtains. "You are Josiah," she said softly. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, eyes lowered. "I hear you are strong, obedient, able to work hard." He nodded once. She leaned forward, her voice calm but sharp. "From today on, you will work near the house. I will give you tasks myself, and you will do them exactly as I say." To others it sounded like a reward, but to Josiah it felt like a warning. That night, while cicadas screamed in the fields, Josiah sat outside the cabin he shared with 3 others. He spoke little, but his silence felt heavier than before. Ruth came by with a bowl of stew. "They say the mistress got plans for you," she whispered. "Be careful, boy. Ain't no safety in a white woman's favor." Josiah said nothing, but inside he remembered Virginia being sold away from his wife and child. He had sworn never to be used again, yet here he was, chosen not for kindness, but for something he did not yet understand. The next week, Elelena ordered Josiah to repair the roof near the parlor. From her balcony she watched him climb, sweat shining on his back. Her eldest daughter, Mary Ann, stepped beside her. "Mama, why are you watching him?" Elelena did not turn. "A mother must choose wisely, my dear. The future of this house depends on strength, not softness." Mary Ann stiffened. She did not fully grasp her meaning, but her mother's tone chilled her. That night she heard servants whispering, and when she realized what her mother might be planning, sleep would not come. A week later, Elelena ordered Josiah to serve wine at the family dinner, an unusual request. The daughters sat in silence while their mother's eyes lingered too long. "Strong hands," Elelena said aloud, watching him pour. "Hands that can shape destiny." Mary Ann dropped her spoon. The youngest, Clara, stared wide-eyed at her mother. After dinner, Elelena dismissed everyone except Josiah. The hallway grew quiet. From the stairs, the daughters heard slow footsteps and the creak of a door closing. Then nothing. From that night on, Josiah became a shadow in the big house. He fixed doors, carried wood, mended walls, always close to the mistress, never far from her gaze. The daughters stopped talking at dinner. Servants stopped laughing in the kitchen. Even the overseer avoided the veranda. Each night, Elelena sat in her husband's chair, writing in a black leather journal. On one page, in neat, careful writing, she had penned, "The new Whitfield line will rise from strength. My daughters will bear greatness." One evening, Josiah tried to speak. "Ma'am, I mean no disrespect, but this, wait. For you're asking of me, it isn't right." Elena's face hardened. "You will do as I say, Josiah. You owe your life to this house. You belong to it, every part of you." He looked at her then, not as a slave, but as a man stripped of everything except his will. "No, ma'am," he said quietly. "No one owns my soul." The words hung in the air like thunder. From that moment on, Elelena watched him not with curiosity but with anger. The next morning, the overseer was told to keep closer watch on Josiah, but whispers had already spread across the county. A widow, a slave, and a plan so unnatural that other planters pretended not to see it. By the end of summer, every soul on the Whitfield estate felt something terrible approaching. Elena's obsession turned toward her own daughters, and when she forced them toward her twisted vision, the Whitfield legacy began to crack. As the summer sun began to fade earlier each evening, the plantation grew unnaturally quiet. Beneath that silence, something dark was spreading. Like rot beneath polished wood, Elelena Whitfield's eyes held no warmth, if they ever had. Every word carried weight. Every choice was measured. Every glance at Josiah was heavy with purpose. Servants spoke in whispers. The daughters avoided their mother's eyes. Even the house itself seemed to wait. Mary Ann, the eldest, was the only one brave enough to question her. She sensed what her mother was planning, and the thought filled her with dread. One night, as candles flickered in the drawing room, Mary Ann spoke. "Mother," she said softly, "the things you're asking of him, of us, they're not right." Elelena did not look up from her desk. Her pen moved steadily. "What is right," she said, "is what protects the Whitfield name, what keeps our blood strong." Mary Ann stepped closer. But at what cost? That made Elelena pause. She turned, her pale face glowing in candlelight. "At any cost, child. The world takes from the weak. I will not allow we-ness in my house." Mary Ann swallowed hard. For the first time, she was afraid of her own mother. The next morning, Elelena gathered her daughters in the parlor. The air was thick with heat, magnolia scent drifting through open doors. Josiah stood silently near the veranda, eyes lowered, thoughts far away. "My dears," Elena began, "you are my pride, my life's purpose. But this family must survive long after I am gone. We are chosen for something greater, something the world will never understand." Her second daughter, Louise, spoke nervously. "Mama, people are talking." "The preacher's wife said," Elena's voice snapped. "The preacher's wife is a fool. Let her talk. She knows nothing of destiny." The younger girls exchanged frightened looks. They had always obeyed her, always trusted her judgment, but now even they saw something in her eyes that was no longer faith. It was madness. That night the older sisters could not sleep. Marianne sat at her window staring into the dark fields, listening to the cicadas. She saw Josiah walking alone, his figure outlined by moonlight. When the house finally fell silent, she crept downstairs. Outside, the air was heavy and alive with night sounds. She whispered his name, Josiah. He stopped but did not turn. "She isn't well," Marianne said, her voice shaking. "She's losing herself." Josiah turned to her, his face calm but deeply tired. "I know," he said, "but she won't stop until someone stops her." Tears filled Marianne's eyes. "Then she'll destroy us all." From that night on, Marianne avoided her mother, but Elena noticed. The widow grew sharper, colder, and more suspicious with each passing day. She began keeping the girls close, never letting them walk by themselves, never allowing them to speak in private. Every choice she made now was about control. She had the girls measured for new dresses, all white, all the same. She claimed it was for a family portrait, but none of them believed her. And Josiah. He was trapped between two worlds. He was watched day and night, ordered to work only near the main house. He knew escape was no longer possible, not after Elena had made him the center of her twisted dream. One evening, as the sky burned deep orange, Elena summoned Marianne to the study. On the desk rested her black leather journal, its pages filled with neat, careful writing. "Read it," she said. Marianne hesitated, then opened the book. Her mother's words stared back at her. A new line must begin. "My daughters shall carry it. Josiah will be the vessel of renewal." Marianne's hands trembled. "Mother, you can't mean this." Elena rose, her face pale and cold. "It has already started," she said softly. "The Whitfields will not be erased." Marianne stepped backward, her voice cracking. "You're ruining us." Elena did not blink. "No, my dear, I'm saving us." Marianne fled the room and ran straight to the servants' quarters. She found Ruth and whispered through tears, "He's gone mad. She'll use him. She'll use all of you," Ruth said, resting a shaking hand on her shoulder. "Child, you best find a way out. Your mama already sold her soul." That night, thunder rolled over the plantation and rain slammed against the old white columns. Inside the great house, Elena Whitfield sat alone at her desk and wrote one final line in her journal. "The seed is chosen. The future is near." The rain that soaked the Whitfield plantation lasted 3 days. When the sun finally returned, the place felt different, quiet, heavy, changed. Workers in the fields spoke in whispers, afraid their words might drift through the air and reach the mistress's ears. The overseer avoided the main house, saying, "Miss Whitfield don't need no man telling her right from wrong anymore." By then, everyone knew something was terribly wrong inside that mansion. Elena Whitfield stopped attending church. Her daughters no longer went into town. The preacher came once and left pale and silent, gripping his Bible tight. Josiah, the tall man at the center of the whispers, became like a ghost moving through the estate. The men respected him, the women pitied him, and the mistress watched him like a hawk. He learned to keep his eyes down, his mouth shut, and his spirit buried deep. But inside him, something was beginning to burn. One night, moonlight spilled through the tall windows of the big house. Marianne slipped quietly into the study. The black leather journal lay open on the desk, as if waiting. She read her mother's latest entry, written in perfect ink. "The blood must mix. The line must be renewed. I am chosen to make it so." The room seemed to spin. She pressed her hand over her mouth to stop herself from crying out. She did not see her mother standing in the doorway. Elena's voice cut through the silence. "You've been reading what does not belong to you." Marianne turned, her heart racing. "What you're doing is madness." Her mother stepped closer, delight dancing across her face. "Madness?" she said softly. "No, purpose. You are too young to understand what it takes to build something that lasts." Marianne backed away. "You can't use him, Mother. He's a man, not an animal." Elena struck her before she could finish. The slap echoed through the house. "Enough," she hissed. "You will obey me." Tears filled Marianne's eyes, not from pain, but from the terror of realizing her mother truly believed she was doing God's work. That night, Marianne ran again to the servants' quarters. She found Josiah sitting alone, sharpening an old blade used for cutting cane. "She won't stop," Marianne whispered. "She's lost her mind. She means to force this on all of us." Josiah looked up slowly. "I know," Marianne swallowed. "Then we have to leave." He shook his head. "They'd hunt us. A man like me doesn't just walk away." "But if we stay," she said, "she'll destroy everyone. My sisters, you." Josiah's eyes held quiet sorrow. "Then maybe it's time." Someone stopped her. For a long moment neither spoke. Crickets chirped. Thunder rumbled far away. "If you try," Marianne whispered, "she'll kill you." Josiah gave a faint, sad smile. "Maybe, but I'll die standing." By morning, rumors spread beyond the plantation. A trader said he'd heard the Whitfield widow had lost her senses, mixing faith and bloodlines. Others whispered the family was cursed. Neighbors avoided her road. Even the mail carriers stopped coming. Elena seemed untouched by shame. She held herself taller than ever, hair pinned tight, eyes burning with certainty. When one daughter cried at supper, she said calmly, "Tears are for the weak. We are chosen for more." That night she ordered the parlor prepared for a ceremony. Candles were lit. Curtains were drawn. The girls were dressed in white. Josiah was called to the main hall. The silence was crushing. Elena stood before the great doors, her daughters shaking behind her. "It is time," she said. "Before she could continue, Marianne stepped forward. "No, Mother. This ends tonight." Elena's lips tightened. "You forget yourself." Marianne raised her voice, hands trembling. "You forget God. You forget decency and everything Father stood for." For a moment, Elena looked stunned. Then her voice turned cold as iron. "You will obey me. I won't." Josiah moved then, slow and steady, placing himself between them. His voice was low but firm. "This house ain't holy, ma'am, and your God wouldn't want this." Elena's hand shook, her jaw tightened. "You dare speak to me of God?" Josiah did not move. His eyes met hers, calm and unafraid. Something in that look cracked her certainty. For the first time, Elena Whitfield looked unsure. Candlelight flickered. No one breathed. Outside, thunder rolled as if the sky itself was listening. That night, the rain returned, harder than before. Lightning split the sky, lighting the white columns of the mansion. Inside, candles burned low, wax dripping onto the floor. Josiah stood in the hallway, heart pounding. Upstairs, Elena's voice hissed with rage and madness. "She's turned them against me." Marianne was locked in her room. Her sisters cried softly behind their doors. Josiah knew if he waited until morning, someone would die. He went to the back stairs where shadows gathered. In the servant quarters, a few men looked up. They saw his face and said nothing. "It's time," he whispered. Fear passed through them. Everyone knew the price of running. Then an older woman spoke softly. "I'll help. The Lord's waited long enough." They moved like ghosts. In the barn they gathered bread, water, and an old lantern with little oil. Josiah cut a horse free, whispering to calm it. In her room, Marianne sat at the window. As rain ran down the glass, she heard the back door creak below. Her heart jumped. She forced the latch, praying not to wake her mother. It gave way. She ran barefoot down the hall, her nightgown brushing the floor. Josiah stood at the door, soaked, lantern in hand. Their eyes met. "You came," he whispered. "I wasn't staying," she said. A floorboard creaked above them. Elena's voice called out, sharp and distant. "Marianne?" Thunder crashed. Josiah grabbed her hand. Now, they ran into the rain. Wind howled. Mud sucked at their feet. A window burst open behind them. Elelena's scream tore through the storm. Traitors! They ran past the fields until the house became only a shadow. At dawn, the dogs were released. The overseer rode out with rifles, shouting. Marianne's feet bled. Josiah slow, wed to steady her. There's a river ahead, he whispered. If we cross, we can hide. The dogs found them first. Howls filled the woods. Josiah pulled Marianne behind a fallen tree. A gunshot cracked bark near his head. He lifted the branch like a weapon and moved forward. Another shot. Silence. Moments later, Josiah stumbled back, bleeding but alive. We have to go. They reached the river, wild and swollen. We can't cross, Marianne cried. We must. Hand in hand, they stepped into the freezing water. The current fought them. Rain stung their faces. They did not let go. In a flash of lightning, Marianne saw her mother at the edge of the woods, black cloak snapping in the wind. Elelena did not move. She only watched as the river swallowed them. By morning, the plantation stood silent, a grand house with no laughter, no prayers, just one woman staring toward the river that took everything she tried to control. Rumors spread across Georgia. People said the mansion was cursed. I said screams echoed in the rain. Years passed. The house stood empty. Travelers claimed to see a pale woman at the window when lightning struck. Others swore they heard a man's voice by the river. And they said that on nights when the river floods, two shapes stand at its edge, a tall man and a young woman, hand in hand, looking back at the house that destroyed them all.